dominance was dead in Formula One. Well, this was a little bit of a boring one at the Mexican Grand Prix this year. Nice to have it back on the calendar. I really do enjoy this circuit, but with a 20-second lead at the end, it wasn't really so much of a race as more of just a walk in the park for Max Verstappen and Red Bull. It hadn't looked like it was going to be that easy after qualifying had put Mercedes on a 1-2 front row lockout at a track they're not necessarily great at, so still unsure what quite happened to the Red Bulls and their pace during qualifying. But in the end, it didn't matter. An incredible start by Max Verstappen, diving up between both of the Mercedes to get P1 going into the first corner, something he did not give up for the entirety of the race. A great performance from Lewis Hamilton to keep a much faster Sergio Perez behind, who was also getting the fuel from his home crowd this weekend. Great drive from Hamilton to hold on to that second. Some really key points in both championships and also damage limitation on that Drivers' Championship, which with Max dominating so much this weekend was really crucial to them. But the absolute killer for Red Bull, but absolute triumph for Mercedes, was completely risking or completely demolishing Bottas's race. He had a bad start anyway, unfortunately having some contact off the start, which did see him tumble down the order and then have to build his way back up. Pit strategy had him kind of fighting just outside the top 10 anyway. He wasn't going to score any points, but a clever move from Mercedes to bring him in, put him on some new tyres, I think they were new at the end, to take the fastest lap. Now, he didn't score the fastest lap point himself, but importantly, he took it off of Verstappen and Red Bull, keeping Mercedes ahead by one singular point in the Constructors, and also just keeping 1 point extra away from Verstappen in the drivers to assist teammate Lewis Hamilton. The podium was that: Verstappen, Hamilton, Perez, who was a very, very home favourite. You could really hear the crowd this weekend. And again, it was nice to see the crowds back in full. They were building additional grandstands throughout the weekend to accommodate for the additional people and all of the extra fans who wanted to come and watch the Mexican Grand Prix. It's really nice to see these races that are returning not only to the calendar, after a year absence, but also returning to Formula One with full full capacity allowed, seeing the full capacity really showing up in their masses. It's just great for the health of the sport. It's great to see that people are still happy to travel to races in and amidst the times we are currently living, which are turning into the norms right now. But it's just really nice to see that Formula One can kind of really start moving back to what we used to know. Maybe getting a little bit more access, a few more people on the grid now. Grid walks are back, which is super fun to get those insights ahead of the race, with some proper good drivers this weekend as well, who actually stopped to talk to the presenters on the grid to give us some really nice insight ahead of the race. So very good stuff in that. And again, I've done it again. I did it last time. My bad. Let's get back to talking down our top 10 and talking about the race itself. Like I said, not the most interesting, but in terms of the championships, very interesting indeed. Now, 19 points in the lead is Verstappen, really commanding the Drivers' Championship at the moment. Hamilton is really going to have to start fighting back. There are a few tracks that are coming up Mercedes are hoping are going to swing the advantage back to them. But saying that, tracks this season that we've thought Red Bull wouldn't be good at, they have been very good at and very competitive at. So I think the Red Bull this season is a very well-rounded car for all circuits, which does mean it's going to be difficult to find a circuit it's not great at, where the Mercedes is really pulling the advantage. I will so far as to say, I would probably say the Red Bull's the fastest car on the grid this year. Now, you wouldn't have heard me saying that earlier this season. In fact, I'm pretty confident I blew that theory out the water early doors, but I'm changing my tune, and I definitely think, I'd even say right now it's Red Bull's to lose in both departments. I mentioned this in the US video as well, that Red Bull seem to have both hands on both championships at the moment. Mercedes are kind of slipping their grip on both of them, with now Mercedes still leading the Constructors by 1 point, yes, but 2 races ago that was a 36-point lead they had. Now down to 1 in 2 races, with only 4 races to go, so it's gonna get tasty at the end. A great race from Pierre Gasly this weekend, starting 5th on the grid to come home 4th at the end of the race. Very good drive from him. That AlphaTauri showed some brilliant pace at the beginning of the season. I think as we're getting towards the end of the season, that pace is starting to re-show again. Probably getting some tips and hints from Red Bull as well about how to optimize. Gasly's got a really good handle on that car, and you can tell that when you look over his results this season and last, to be fair. He just feels very well suited to that car, to that team. He's very well accustomed with the people around him and probably how to set that car up to be a nice point. He's a very good teammate for Yuki Tsunoda in his first season. Probably learning a lot from the old Gasmeister is Tsunoda. So a good pairship there, but a great race from Gasly to slit in ahead of the duo of Ferraris once again, performing exceptionally well, all things considered. And at the beginning of the year, they seem to be on the back foot. They seem to be a fairly established low top 10 team. Now really starting to establish themselves as third fastest on the grid. They now lead McLaren in the Constructors' Championship. I think the gap is 19 points, but if that's wrong, I'm going to put it right here because I can't quite remember right now. But they have indeed taken third place off of McLaren. And recently, as I said last time, McLaren's pace and performance has been a little bit lackluster as well, which has not been great for McLaren or McLaren fans out there, especially with the surgence of McLaren support after the US Grand Prix. But it is good for all of you Scuderia fans out there who are hoping to see a return to glory days for Ferrari, hopefully on the horizon, with things shaken up a little bit next year. But as I've very likely said before, I don't expect much to change with aero regulation changes next year. Hopefully I'm very wrong. I like it when I'm wrong in these situations, otherwise it's going to be fairly boring for the next 3 years. And very predictable, which we're kind of irking away from a little bit. So at the moment, it's kind of like, yeah, well, probably Verstappen's going to win, and if he doesn't win, it's going to be Hamilton, so, you know, coin toss on that one. But a great performance from the Ferrari duo of Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz. Sainz looking to make some good performance. He was racing really well, seemed to be having a much better race than Leclerc, but Ferrari doing the right thing in enabling Sainz to swap ahead to see if he could make any gaps. See if he could close the gap, to Gasly ahead, but when he couldn't, swapped them back for Leclerc to take 5th and Sainz to take 6th. So good job from Ferrari all around there. Very much outscoring McLaren, who only managed to get 1 point on the board this weekend. Definitely a weekend to forget for the Woking outfit there. However, talking about good races, another good race from Sebastian Vettel in the Aston Martin. Aston really got his strategy right this time around, put him in a brilliant position to optimize on a P7 finish, which is a great result for the team. A few more points in their midfield battle in the constructors with Alpine, AlphaTauri and Alfa Romeo, because of course not only do we have 4 A starting teams this year, they all also have to be in the same kind of area on track and in the championships, because that's not annoying at all. Thanks guys, thanks for the solid help over here. But a great race from Vettel nonetheless. Behind him was Kimi Räikkönen in one of his final races in Formula 1. Finally having a pretty good performance, ending up P8 for him. He's had a few quiet races, he's had a few incident-filled races, he's had a few races to be forgotten and stuff, and obviously unfortunately had to miss a couple earlier in September when he contracted the coronavirus. But he's back and he's racing hard in his final few races. It's probably around the place you would expect to see an Alfa Romeo finishing low top 10. But a good job from Raikkonen nonetheless to score some lovely points in one of his final races in the sport. The bottom of the top 10 was closed off by Fernando Alonso and of course Lando Norris coming across the line for that 1 point for McLaren. Daniel Ricciardo, Lando Norris's teammate, was 12th behind the second Alfa Romeo of Antonio Giovinazzi. Not the best race, as I said, for McLaren this weekend. Didn't start great with the two with Ricciardo definitely getting tangled up with Bottas in that start of the race incident, and kind of the only incident of the entire race really, but not the best race for them. They suffered with that incident at the start with Ricciardo. I think they were just suffering with pace. Maybe the altitude difference at Mexico, obviously the highest Grand Prix we race at, so the highest race above sea level we go to, possibly really not working well with the Mercedes engines, which means the Mercedes running cars would not be in the best fighting position, basically kind of on the back foot before we started. We did have a few cars tangled together at the start of the race, unfortunately seeing Yuki Tsunoda, who had qualified in the top 10, so was looking to have a good start to the race as well. A real shame for him falling out that early, and Mick Schumacher also getting tangled up with too much damage to carry on. Other cars that got tangled in that mess, basically what happened was somehow or another, Ricciardo tagged Bottas, who span around, and then everyone just had to like dive out of the way to not hit the backwards facing Mercedes. Luckily no one did, because that would have been horrible. But Lance Stroll got tangled in that, Schumacher got tangled in that, Tsunoda got tangled in that, a few cars got tangled in that, some of them having to pit for damage repairs, some of them completely falling out of the race, like Tsunoda and Schumacher. So a bit of a shame for them. But all in all, a fairly sleepy Mexican Grand Prix, if I'm being honest. I wasn't wholly engaged with it. It was very much a Red Bull dominant race. The excitement came with like 10-15 laps to go, again a bit like the US Grand Prix did last weekend, or the weekend before even. The excitement came in the final dash towards the finish line for the fight between, ironically, a Red Bull and a Mercedes in Hamilton, this time in Perez being that Red Bull, and Perez trying to get second place. There was a moment I thought he was going to do it. He was like 8/10 behind, 5 laps to go, slowly closing. Then they got caught in that traffic cycle, and at that point I just didn't think he had enough laps left to close the gap enough to make the pass. I think it's quite difficult to pass around the Autodromo Hermanas Rodriguez. I did remember it. So yeah, you know, it seemed difficult to overtake. It seemed that the DRS wasn't overtly effective, and obviously you've got the long main straight, of course, and then the stadium section, which is quite twisty turny, so didn't seem to be the easiest track to overtake on yesterday. But there you go, that was the Mexican Grand Prix. Like I said, a little bit snoozy on my side of things until the last. Basically, if you watch the first 5 laps and the last 10 laps, you probably got all of the excitement out of the race that was there, because the rest of it was just like undercuts and pit stops and trying to be a bit clever with strategy, and Aston Martin pulling that off fairly well, and Mercedes having slow stops with Bottas, and only Bottas, and Ferrari had a couple of good stops, and Red Bull bossing it with stops as per usual. So all in all, it was an okay race. I wouldn't call it like a complete snooze fest, because like I said, the start and the end were actually quite exciting, but that chunk in the middle was a bit lame. For want of a better word. So it was an okay race. Could have been better. Like 5 out of 10, maybe would watch again. Next up, we have another circuit we have not been to since 2019. The Brazilian Grand Prix at Interlagos, or Autodromo Jose something. I can't remember the last bit of that. But Interlagos, the twisty turny circuit. No long straights on this one. Very, very much a cornering circuit, I guess. Some heavy braking zones, no long straights to dominate with a good engine package, right? So this again should be a circuit that favors more Red Bull than Mercedes. You're going to be seeing Mercedes again, quite likely, going for damage limitation here, trying to just take away as many points as possible from Red Bull. I predict Verstappen will win it. Probably a Red Bull 1-2 on this one, I'd hazard, because I just think it's easier to overtake, and I just think that this circuit is going to suit the Red Bulls way more than the Mercedes. Hamilton will cross the line 3rd, Verstappen will extend his lead by a bit, and Red Bull will take the lead of the constructors after next weekend's race. As for the Ferrari-McLaren fight, well, again, this is not going to be an engine dominant circuit, so we could see Ferrari's time to shine here with a circuit that is less focused on that engine power. So maybe a cheeky little Ferrari podium, that would be fun. But if not, I definitely think we'll see the Ferraris outscoring the McLarens once again, extending that lead in the championship. But do let me know what you think, what you thought about the Mexican Grand Prix, and what you think is going to happen this weekend coming at the Brazilian Grand Prix. Down in the coffee pot down below, where I will continue this discussion with you. I absolutely love discussing this stuff with you. I love that we can do this. I love that I'm back to doing this. It just feels right to be back in here and talking about Formula 1 and motorsport. Keep an eye, because I am planning also to do a WEC 2021 season roundup. For anyone who doesn't know, World Endurance Championship is WEC, sports car racing, the series that races through Le Mans as well. We're going to talk about that season, talk about some things that probably are coming for next year, but probably talk a little bit about 2023 as well, because that is when WEC is going to get spicy. And we're all ready and looking forward to that. We're very excited about life. But as I was saying, this race, next race, let me know your thoughts, feelings, and figures down in the coffee pot down below, and I will continue this discussion with you there. But for now, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. It's been an absolute blast, as always. If you enjoyed this video, go share that like button, some Mexican Grand Prix love, and if you want to support the channel, go hit subscribe and ring that bell so you don't miss it time I upload a video. Stay awesome, and I will see you all in the next video! It when I change the outro. How many of you actually do it along with me? And if you do it along with me, how much do you hate it when it changes? I'm just curious. Just a curious being.